Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining and watching this video about that engine failures that happened for me about several months ago in my Europa XS with powered Rotax 914 engine. My name is Alexei, and I'm based in Croatia, and I have a wonderful guest and a friend today who has no idea about what happened. So we're gonna have to keep it interesting discussion for everyone. Then, Ilya, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Ilya is instructor and a captain in one of the U.S. airlines. Did I lie too much about that?
No, I am technically still an instructor, even though I don't use my instructor certificate anymore. It's actually, I think, going to expire this year unless I renew it, which I plan to renew it, but I have not been instructing for 2 years. And yes, I'm a captain at a
Yeah,
regional
but you're
airline.
still authorized to criticize me and provide your feedback about
I'm
what
always
happened.
authorized to criticize you. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and you are the fun guy in the show, but please don't steal it. You're still not a star of the show, so but keep a right amount of fun, while I will be boringly telling about what's actually happened. So it was absolutely brilliant weather, and I had just a short flight. Visited my friend. So I visited my friend and had a like maybe about 1 hour flight. He in Croatia, and on my route from a small airfield near Zagreb to my destination in Zadar, which is airport is right here. I was happily cruising at about 7,000 feet, crossing this Velebit Mountains, which is about 5,000 something, to the seaside because this area was busy, the CTR was the airport, so they vectored me like kind of this way. And occasionally, when I have a relaxed flight, I do look for the landing options. Like we've been all told to do that, right? And I remember myself like happily cruising like 7,000 feet, looking at possible options. I just crossed the mountain ridge, so there is actually better way to go forward for me than backward in case of engine failure. And looking, it's not good. Like I have rough terrain here actually in Croatia, so you understand, and you can see it on the video, and some sea, and then some islands that are like just full of rocks. And yeah, I was saying like, that's probably not a
Yeah.
nice place,
Yeah,
a nice
definitely.
time to have the engine failure. And suddenly, that was a surreal moment. And suddenly, the
Wow.
engine was just like, "Brrr,"
Holy moly.
and
And you
started
were just thinking
vibrating.
about it. That's
Yeah, and I
crazy.
was just thinking
That
about
is
it. It was
insane.
just me
But it's
on
good that
board.
you were thinking about it. It's actually good luck. It's bad luck and good luck.
Yeah, and that feeling was really surreal. So I'm like several months later, I'm trying now to to digest it and tell you about that. And it was like it was hard to believe that it's started to happen to me. I was caring about this area, I was caring about this engine, right? And it's like happened out of nowhere in the cruise. It was hard to believe first, and then I started to do some things. But before that, let me quickly switch the mode here.
Hold on. And I assume when it happened, the first feeling you had is denial, right? You didn't believe that it's really happening, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So how long did you spend on denial, you would think? How many seconds do you
Um,
think?
I think maybe half a minute, maybe 15 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I started to react quite quickly, like what I was trained to do. And let me set us up for this flight. So I was about to cross the mountains, and we can also have a little bit of the glide path here. And if I put us into the full screen mode,
What did you
can you see
record
it,
this
huh?
data with, by the way? This flight data
Um,
stuff.
this flight data has been recorded with my Sentry on the iPad
Okay.
with for
Cool.
flight, but visualize it, import it and visualize it by a service called Fly Store. And I will provide a link into the descriptions so everyone can just play this flight and see what's happened. So I just click on this play button and we'll be just living with me through this kind of flights. And so as you can see, it started at about 7,000 feet. And first, yeah, it was a little bit of denying, and then I quickly started to do what I have in my checklist. And what I was trying to do is to switch additional fuel pump, to change the fuel tanks, and to click and change the magnetos. Right, so this is a Rotax engine, and
And it's Rotax
nothing.
engine, but it's carbureted, right?
It's
Carbureted.
carbureted, and this is very
Okay.
important.
So you don't have
As
you
you
don't
don't.
have you don't have FADEC, nothing like that, right? It's just simple engine.
No, no,
Okay.
no. And so I started to do all this stuff, like changing, put additional fuel pump on, changing fuel tanks, cycle magnetos left and right, and nothing happened. And so for you to understand, the engine was running, vibrating heavily. So it was, I reduced the throttle to the idle to keep the vibration level acceptable. In meanwhile, when nothing happened, nothing helped me when I did all these changes to the configuration of the aircraft. I was trying to cycle the throttle, and at the point when I started to put it full forward, the vibration was so enormous. Like I was trying to do it many times, but the vibration was so enormous that I couldn't see instruments. I mean, I was thinking that the engine will just depart from the aircraft,
Mm-hmm.
and so my decision was just to reduce throttle to the idle. That was the level of vibration that was quite acceptable, that I could continue and focus on the flying the aircraft. And at this
Okay, so
point,
so you had idle thrust basically available too.
yes, that's correct.
And I see you
Basically,
you
idle
pitched you
thrust.
pitched for best glide. I see you did that.
Yeah, at this point, what's my uh, speed is. So this is obviously all ground speeds and the
Mm-hmm.
GPS altitude that has been recorded by Sentry. But you can see that I started to pitch for my best glide, which is about 75 knots, and looking for places to land, which is, as you can see on the screen, it's not many nice spots to
Mm-hmm.
land here. And I have this wonderful feature on Foreflight is with a gliding ring. It shows you the gliding distance where you can land. And my initial thought was, as I was pointing out aircraft towards somewhere the ground, uh, if I can reach the airport, which is located right here, it's abandoned airstrip, and let me quickly show you that on the 3D view. So this is abandoned military airstrip. This is one that I was originally pointed into
Okay.
this one, you see.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of garbage on it. So they tried to block people using it for the street racing or something like that, or
Mm-hmm.
for the drug racing. And at this point, I was in touch with ITC. I declared my emergency and telling them that I would probably land here because I think that the glide ring on my foreflight it started to increase a little bit. As originally, I couldn't land there according to my data. I had a conservative set on my foreflight was a glide ratio, and I also had a partial power like on idle, which is important.
Mm-hmm.
Then I decided that I can go there, and I was in a gliding distance, and I was pointing there, and IDC strongly advised me to not land there because of this a lot of garbage on
Mm-hmm.
this runway. And since this is my domestic airport, I was on this runway and was exploring it, like what options I have in case of engine failure. And I see it's with my eyes, it's like maybe barely like 300-400 meters I can find between these piles of garbage. But when you have no engine power, it will be hard
Yeah.
to find it. And it's actually
Yeah.
ends with a cliff. As soon as
Oh,
I
that's
recall
very
that
nice.
it ends with a cliff, I decided,
Yeah.
okay, maybe it's not a good option at all. And at this point, I started turning. So we go back to the uh, pilot view and see where I started turning a little bit. And I was in touch with ADC. That was very helpful. Um, but at this point, I was about 10 miles from airport, and I couldn't reasonably like glide to the airport. And as you can see, I was descending about five 650 minute, which is same descent ratio that I have when I just do the idle power, about the same descent with idle power. So,
Yeah, the
what my
fact that you had
options are here?
the fact that you had 7,000 feet really is what was really good for you
Yeah,
in this
yeah. I guess we
particular
can
case.
barely touch it this in our learning lessons section of this video. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
because
what's
right now,
different they have home.
if you were 3,000 feet, then that wouldn't look great right now. Like there's no places to
No,
land. I don't know
no way.
these little islands on the right side. Is that rocks or is that sand?
Yeah, it is rocks, and it looks flat, but it is not.
Right. I
And it
guess you could put
is,
it.
yeah.
If you couldn't make it to the big island, the big land mass, you could probably put it in the water next to these little islands.
Right.
If it's not super choppy.
And it is exactly what I was trying to do. As you see, my nose is pointed to this like city and a bay here,
Yeah.
which has a shallow water. I know that it had a shallow water, and
Yeah.
it was March, so it was not like a tourist season here in Croatia. So I assume the beach might be free here, and it's a sandy beach. So I was pointing there and thinking maybe I can land there. So that was my thinking at that time. And I'm glad I had like about a full 15 minutes from the engine failure to the landing to process everything. So I had quite a lot of time, but not a single second I was free. I was so busy like trying to thinking and controlling the aircraft. Anyway, so at this point. I was trying to do everything with aircraft, whatever I could. Like nothing helped, and you know that the feeling when you practice normally that like engine failure maneuvers, you assume that with a checklist it should help. And I consider myself like a careful pilot. Maybe you know a little bit about me.
Hmm.
I consider myself careful pilot, so I do like a fuel sums before almost every flight,
Almost.
and yeah, and then like I do all the checks, reasonable like checklists, and flying high when it's reasonable to fly high.
Well, here it definitely
So
helped you.
yeah, and I did everything what I could do, and I did all my emergency checklist, but nothing helped. So
Yeah.
this is a very rare situation when it's really a problem with the engine. It's something really happened, and I couldn't figure out why and what happened. And then I decided to see where the a bit lower ground and maybe flat grounds here is available. Since I started to move close to the ground now, about 3,000 feet.
Yeah. Well, this
Um,
looks pretty good at this point already. Like I can see some fields on the right side. Like if you could
which
make it
one?
straight.
Which one, for
I mean, right
example?
there on
This
the right
one?
side. Yeah, these no, a bit more further to the. Yeah, this stuff looks pretty good, at least based on
They
the
all very,
satellite pictures.
very rough fields, and they very, very short fields. I mean, yeah, that would be an
But you don't need a
option.
lot, right? You're a small, slow airplane, so you don't need a big field.
Yeah, I I would need a good like 300-400 meters, I guess.
What's your landing speed in this thing with full flaps?
With full flaps, I normally land at 55 knots.
Okay, well, yeah, that's a little faster than I expected.
55.
55 knots, yeah. It's kind of
Okay.
fast. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
slow.
I mean, it's on a short final, but of course,
Yeah.
the slow speed is about 45 knots
Yeah, I'm
with
just
the full
trying to
flap.
compare it to Aeropract, for example. Aeropract, I'm trying to remember what speed it has on landing. I think it's like
Yeah, our bike
50.
is
Yeah.
definitely
But it's a
much
stall
shorter
airplane, right?
landing.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Because
yes.
yours is faster in cruise, of course. So
Yeah,
you have a
yeah.
cruise setup.
And at this point, I was telling you, ADC, that I'm going to put it somewhere on the field. That is keeping me telling like how far I'm from the airport, but that not very helpful. What was very helpful, they tell me the wind. They told me the wind, and the wind was like 220 degrees or something. So it was from our right side.
Hmm.
And at this point, I believe I found the field on my left wing. That was a good for landing. That I was thinking like, okay, that should be fine now. And yeah, I guess this is a field. Let me scroll back a little bit and you'll see it. Just go several seconds
Were
back.
you alone in the airplane?
Yeah, I was alone in the airplane.
That's good luck. That's
Yeah,
good
it was
luck.
much easier. And where is that field? I guess, yeah, this is the field now. So
Hmm.
you can see quite a good looking field, right? Like
Yeah.
quite long
Yeah.
and very nice. But look what's happened next.
Very nice.
Yeah, so I started, I was quite high. So the ground here is about 300 feet, and that field is probably even lower, maybe 200 or 100 feet. And then and I was like, you said 2,300. So I started to make quite a left base for this field. Sorry, left downwind, crosswind and downwind for this field. And then started turning. Let's see much here. Okay, some mountains. But at this moment, I realized that this is real. When I was high, I was still quite relaxed, but at this point when I decided like there is no second chance for me to land, and I
Hmm.
selected this field and I have to perform a landing there,
Hmm.
was kind of like I wouldn't say scary. I would say
Freaky.
scary. Yeah. Because now I had to make everything perfect. And this is like enormous amount of pressure I felt
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
to perform everything well. And what's happened on my downwind, let me show you on the other view. What makes things a bit more complicated is that I found, so I was trying to make like a downwind for this kind of like field. But I
Hmm.
noticed the antenna. You can barely see here
I
on
see it. Yeah.
yeah, and you can
There's a
see
bunch.
it's actually on my photos that was
Yeah.
on the beginning of the video.
Hmm.
It is a huge antenna. I
There's
mean,
four of them, right?
it's four on this satellite images, but it's actually one. It's probably some outdated one, and
Hmm.
it is located more closely to this end of the field, to this edge. So my idea was when I spotted the antenna, I said, "Oh, okay, so I will be landing like close to the antenna and just landing on this field like that." And when I was about to turn at this point to the field, I realized that every antenna has some wires on the side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Guy
like,
wires.
wow. Wow. So um, I couldn't relax even at that point. And then I started to
Yeah.
look for this wire. So this is this is my track. I was tracking to see the wires, and as soon as I found the wires, I had a good distance from the wires at this point. I started to continue my original intention was to land like this direction. So I started to turn a little bit, and this is just the most dramatic moments uh, of this whole flight. Where's antenna? Okay, so antenna is located somewhere here.
Yeah.
So just this banking angle is a little bit might be not correct because the fly stow is probably calculated from the turn speed. So it was not looking exactly like that, but you had the feeling. So antenna is on my right. I was trying to see the wires. I probably spot the wires at this moment, and I need to turn right because the field to land is here. I
Yeah.
was not supposed to land here. I was to land here. So kind of like, I don't know how you call it, maybe a base, a base turn, very low. I'm actually over the field now. And now very close to the ground, you see like about 140 feet. And so a GL is just a 50 feet. Very helpful. I started to maneuver just to align with this field. And I remember myself just, I was sleeping as well a lot because I was very high.
And this is actually a classic scenario. People come in usually high. Everybody's afraid of coming in too low on an engine
Yeah,
out, and
yeah,
people
yeah,
end up coming in too high. This is super classic.
yeah, yeah. And at that point, I had still, you can see like iron flare for good several seconds, and the field is about to end soon, and it's actually downhill. What I realized that after lining up on the kind of like final, it is a downhill, which is absolutely you couldn't spot it from that bow. Maybe just
Yeah.
using some terrain features you can understand that, but it is a downhill. So what is funny things I started to do, I recall myself like I can't do anything at the moment.
Yeah.
I just I just keeping the pitch just descending and like just bleeding speed to touch the ground. And I was so badly wanted to be on the ground at that point that I started to press the brakes. I mean the wheel brakes, I don't have air brakes, but just the normal brakes in the air. And I immediately realized that like I am doing stupid thing. And
Yeah.
I released the brakes. I continued flying, and I started to doing that again. It's like
Wow.
this human behavior is so
Yeah.
weird under
Yeah.
stressful situation.
Yep.
So, and I decided, okay, that's no pushing brakes anymore. And and suddenly the aircraft is just touch the ground and start to decelerate very quickly because it was in fact quite a soft ground. So that was very helpful because the field was like ending right there, and it was a trees over there. So immediately after the landing, I switched everything off, opened the doors, and then I said, okay, maybe I have to call the ADC. So I just switched on the radio because everything was okay. Like as you can see on the photos now, uh, no damages, absolutely no injuries. I was just kind of like normal landing. So I just enabled to turn on the master, and I couldn't call the ATC, the tower in the airport because of the distance and close to the ground. But it was a lot of military activity, airplanes flying in the zone. So I was just transmitted to everyone that everything is okay. And I had a call immediately from the ADC, obviously because they have my phone number in flight plan. and asking like if everything is okay. So this was brilliant. This was brilliant. So everything went actually quite well. And for this point, I want just to say that praise God, this happened in this brilliant weather where I could spot some field because just several days before, I had a flight in marginal VFR conditions over the sea in the rain, where
Mm,
would this happen, the chances
yeah.
even for survival would be very low.
Yep.
So I'm very glad and very happy that everything turns out this way, and a
Yep.
lot of lessons learned. Yeah.
Yeah. You're definitely very lucky. Very lucky for sure. But
Yeah.
also you did a good job too. So you got to pat yourself on the back. Like you did a lot of things correct, right? So
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
what you had going for you is weather. You were high altitude, but primarily because of the ridge, right? If the ridge was not there, you probably would not be at 7,000 feet. What do you think? Or you would still be high.
Mm, I tend to fly high
Mm-hmm.
normally,
Yeah.
think that because like somebody say that while the airspeed is life, the altitude is life insurance. So
Yeah.
I tend to fly a bit high, I guess, than just a normal pilots. And because this is a Rotax 914, a turbo equipped engine, it's not a problem for me.
Mm-hmm. And it's cooler out there, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, for
yeah,
March, that's not a problem, but generally.
yeah,
Yeah, a
yeah.
lot of people fly low because they're just lazy to climb, you know. It takes a long time to climb on different airplanes, right?
It's
So, but
fun to fly low. You can see so much on the ground.
yeah, that's why a lot of people fly low. But at the same time, altitude is your potential energy, right? So you store
Right.
it in case you need it later. And that day, you needed it because if you were 3,000 feet, it would be a different outcome for sure.
Yeah. But even above these mountains, I could like cross them at 500 feet or 1,000 feet as recommended, right? I was crossing at 2,000 feet, thinking like,
Yeah,
okay, I would have better options. 2,000 feet gives me extra 2 minutes. I mean, 1,000 feet extra gives me two
yeah.
minutes extra to think about it. That was
And I
great.
think you made a good decision on, well, first of all, you didn't panic. That's huge props to you, right? Because it's easier to discuss this on the ground, of course. But when it actually
Yeah.
happens, it's difficult to contain your body, right? Because you have adrenaline in your system, everything is working differently, your whole body is freaking out, your mind is not working correctly, right? And
Yeah,
you,
that thing that I started to put the brakes on, put
yeah,
the brakes in the air, that was like just scared for me while I was flying, like what I'm doing.
yeah. For the same reason, when people sometimes we watch these accident investigations again and again, when people stall the plane, even professional airline pilots, they start to pull back on the stick because they don't want to crash and they start pulling back, right? And they make it only worse. And obviously, nobody in the right mind would ever do that, except for in an accident. In this situation, you don't really think straight, and you just do stuff that makes no sense. I mean, you kept your cool. You ran the checklist. You troubleshooted the issue, which is excellent, and then you descended very nicely. You pitched your best glide, which is great, and you descended very nicely. So you did not waste your energy unnecessarily. You were descending 500 feet per minute, which is great. And you had a plan A, which was the field, and then you changed it to plan B, which is great as well. So you changed your mind on the descent not to go to that field with a bunch of trash on the runway, which is probably a good idea, and then you changed it to this field. And then with the antennas, right? It's great that you noticed the antennas and the guy wires, and then you worked around that. So good job.
Thanks, but now you have a permission to criticize.
I mean, for now, there's nothing to criticize. I would not criticize anything.
Okay, then let's me criticize myself
Sure.
or think that I could do better and what I like learned from that. Um, Training matters. I mean, I just want to confirm that all the things uh, was looking very much like in training. Training when we practice engine out landings, not in the fields, but on some airports. But the feeling for the airplane was about the same, and that like visual. measuring distances. So I was obviously I came too high, and that antenna was just spooked me, and just made my all my calculations a little bit wrong. But that things that training sometimes just landing on airport is from the even from the downwind position, just put the engine to the idle and land it just to feel the aircraft is great. But what I could do better in this landing is just land diagonal. Why did I land? Why did I land with a field like it was a square on the ground? I was landing like on a runway, while like you're saying, but while I could just land diagonal, it would
Yeah,
be
but if you,
longer. And I wouldn't worry about the antenna at all because antenna was another corner of the field, right?
yeah, I think in this case you fall back to what's more usual to you, right? We're used to
Yeah,
landing on
exactly.
rectangles like this, right?
Exactly.
So we kind of just
Exactly.
and it makes sense. It's fine. You can't really criticize yourself for this. Like you're trying to do what's comfortable for you, what feels comfortable, right? Because you
Yeah.
don't want to introduce too many new things when this happens, right? You don't want to try to do, okay, let me try to do something I've never done. I'm going to land diagonally, or I'm going to do this, right? Because you can do that, but you're really not increasing your chances of success. So you better to stick to your normal operations, right? If you're landing with full flaps, usually land with full flaps. If you landing into the wind, land into the wind. No, if you knew that the field has a grade to it, right? It was a bit downhill. Maybe it made sense to land, with a bit of a tailwind, but upgrade. If you knew that, but you had no way to know that, so you can't
Yeah,
really
it
criticize
was
yourself
it
for
was
that.
difficult to spot it from the above because you see the trees. It's definitely like lower ground or maybe some creek over
Yeah,
there, and
yeah.
I could probably spot it from the above.
I mean, you could, I guess, if you had ForeFlight, you could tap and hold on one side of the field, see the elevation, and tap and hold on the other side. But
Yeah,
that's
right.
like, come on, it's a little bit, at this point, it's like astronaut level of thinking. We can't expect ourselves to
Yeah,
think
yeah.
this way.
And
And for
what's
training,
mm,
for training, you can only train so much because in reality, every single emergency is completely unique and different. So every time we train and practice, it's useful for sure, but it's still not a guarantee that when your actual emergency happens, it's going to be what you trained before, because every each time it's slightly different, slightly off. So you can
okay?
only do so
So
much.
so let me switch to the more technical part. What actually happened?
Yes,
Probably a
what
lot of
happened?
viewers like came to hear saying like maybe I'm flying behind the Rotax, or I know a friend who is flying behind the Rotax. Like what exactly happened? So it was not a pilot error, which accounts, I guess, to maybe 75% of all the accident according to statistics. So it's just in this 25% where just half and half is real like failure with the engine, and another half is some maintenance induced failures, like
Mhm.
where we are now. As this part of the statistics. And I'm very happy to present you the root cause. And the root cause is this tiny particle, this piece. This is a clip. And it costs about €2. I just checked before recording this video. It costs about €2, and you see it's got broken. And I will go a little bit more into the explaining what's happened for all our fellow Rotax pilots. And I know that you've been flying behind Rotax as well, although it was injected, right?
Yes, it was a
It was injected.
912 IS
Yeah,
fuel injected FADEC.
yeah. With
But
injected,
I
it is
I was
different.
flying also the Aeropract back in the days, which was carbureted Rotax. I think it was
Right.
912, just classic 912.
Okay. So he's a carburetor, and Rotax has actually two carburetors, right? On the four-cylinder engine, we have left and right carburetor, which accordingly provides a fuel and air for left and right two cylinders. So when I removed one of those carburetors, I've not said a funny thing, but even before that, you know what? I forgot to mention that after I landed, I tried to start the engine and it started fine. Can you imagine that? This amount of confusion that I had, like,
Yeah, but
okay,
it was working, right? At idle. Like it never really shut down,
it
right?
actually it no, it actually shut down when I was on the gliding, so it was
Oh, okay.
not
You
enough
didn't say that.
airstream to turn the propeller,
Okay.
so
So it
it's actually shut
wasn't
down.
okay, so
It
it
was no,
was
it was really working very nice on the when I started it.
and actually when it shut down in the air, did you feel that your glide improved a little bit? Because technically with the prop that stopped, there should
Mm,
be less resistance, less drag
it
for the
was
prop that's
very
spinning.
short time before I
Okay.
touched down, so I couldn't really feel that. But I my assumption is that I actually had a little bit of power when the engine was running because it was still producing power. We will come to that because what happened is one of the carburetors actually failed. And it's failed on this clip that I was showing you, and I'll show you where this clip is. So this is a needle that regulate, this is main jet needle, that regulate how much fuel is coming through this venturi, right? And this whole assembly, where this needle is moved up and down depending on how much depression is in this carburetor, basically how much throttle you open, and it regulates the amount of fuel that is coming from that. And this needle is holding by the clip. You see number 11, retaining clip?
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
this tiny piece that I was showing that it got broken. So when it got broken, this jet needle just fall down, and you can see on the photos on the left, it's just a small, I mean, top of the jet needle
Yep.
is just here. It
I see.
completely blocking the fuel. And we will come to the reason why why it has failed. But I want to briefly touch the reason why engine has actually started on the ground and what I could do actually better in the air to not let on the field. So this is a specific for the Rotax carburetors, and they have like a separate system. It's a little bit clipped here. Separate system that is used to start the engine. It is a choke. I mean, in the airplane, in the cockpit, it's called choke, and it's basically when you activate it, you're pulling this choke. It activates a totally and absolutely different system to mix a fuel and the air to start the engine, which is, I assume it's more rich, and it is provided like here behind this butterfly valve. So this system with a choke is just basically another mini carburetor within this carburetor. So
Yep.
that's why it started for me on the ground because I started with a choke. It's happened like after some time the engine was cold, so I started again, and everything was fine. As soon as I released the choke, the engine stopped because obviously the main system to supply fuel didn't work. So
Yep.
what I could do in the air is just to pulling more levers, that I have in aircraft and see if it works, right? Like if I
Yeah.
have a choke, I could pull it at least see how it works or not.
Yeah. Probably wouldn't work too well anyway. It probably would be too rich or something,
Um,
You could
yeah,
try.
maybe
I mean,
I could play a little bit and see if
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it could work.
But sure, but
No, but
yeah,
that's a lesson learned, right? Like
yeah,
if you have some problem, just don't hesitate just to pull something else. Maybe that would help. I
yeah.
mean, for some people that might be
Parachute.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And what else I wanted to tell is, okay. Because Rotax has essentially two carburetors, the lesson learned about that part is they are so critical. I mean, the healthy state of the carburetor is very critical. So it's not like dual magnetos. When one magneto fails, another magneto continue working and your whole engine is working. with a dual carburetors, which is just you have basically a two engine on the same crankshaft. And so one of your, if your carburetor is failing, one of your engine is failing. And because just another side of the engine is start working like normally, you can add a power because the vibration is so huge. So
Yeah.
this means that the failure of one of the Rotax carburetors actually fails the engine. And from the probability standpoint, it means that this whole system with the two carburetors is less
Reliable.
less reliable
Yeah.
exactly when
Exactly.
it has a one carburetor because what happened to one carburetor could happen to another carburetor. So the
Yeah.
chances are almost double. It's not exactly double, but
Yeah.
almost double that
Exactly.
you might have a problem. So my big lesson learned here is the maintenance state of this carburetor should be perfect. If you're flying behind Rotax carburetor with carbureted engines, they must be in tip-top conditions. They must be no leaks, no like causing for vibration. They must be really, really, really good. And
Are there any overhaul periods for carburetors like this? Do you like are you supposed
um,
to send it for repairs or overhauls every X amount of times, hours?
I believe that Rolex recommends to do the checks for the carburetors every 200 hours, but it's not required to be overhauled until the engine is overhauled. I might be not completely correct here.
Because like that clip, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure you're gonna tell us why it failed. It's probably metal fatigue or something. But
yeah.
to figure out why the clip failed, right? Like to find that the clip is fatigued and about to fail, like how do you even do that? I don't think you can
Um,
find that.
I was talking with mechanics, and he mentioned that if some mechanic is doing the normal inspection of the carburetor, so they just disassembled it and check everything is fine, they wouldn't notice this clip get cracked and eventually fail because on this photo you see this. I don't know what is this part is called exactly, but it holds this clip and the jet needle here, right, completely, and it's used
Yeah.
sort of like a Loctite or something. So it's not something that gets disassembled unless carburetors get overhauled.
Mm-hmm.
So my lesson learned here is once I bought the airplane, I would better to overhaul the carburetors. Why? Rotax actually published in 2019 a service bulletin, a mandatory service bulletin to change this clip because they found that some of those clips has been not properly treated. The metal for those clips has not been properly treated, and they probably found that not only me, but somebody else had a similar engine failure. And in 2019, it is a service bulletin 914-055. I will probably add the link to the description so you don't have to, you can easily search it. And I highly recommend everyone who is flying behind the Rotax engine to check the service bulletin. So for my case, the service bulletin is not directly applicable by serial number of the engine, right? So
Yeah.
my engine is a little bit older than that was affected by the service bulletin. However, if the carburetor was overhauled or this pin has been changed in meanwhile after that,
Yeah.
one of these failed clips could have been installed into the my carburetors. And
Yeah.
nobody keeps records, right? What the exactly clip has been installed, right? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe in like a time period you can understand like, okay, this has been overhauled carburetors between this and that. But even like maintenance records for my aircraft doesn't have this information. Like
Yeah. Well, yeah.
so,
It's a small, tiny
yeah,
clip.
it's a yeah. So
This
what?
is just very unfortunate. It's very bad luck. I don't think you could
Yeah,
have done anything to prevent that. Because even if you overhaul a carburetor, you're introducing new risks because whoever overhauled it, right, they put the wrong thing in there. There's a whole other chapter of stuff that's with overhauls.
you're
So,
talking about maintenance-induced failures, and I totally agree with you. However, for this case, what I learned is carburetors are the things that we cannot really inspect well unless they completely disassembled. So I guess it worth the risk to
yeah.
have carburetors overhauled and reduce this amount of possible failure because of the some problems with the carburetors itself.
Yeah, my point is that, you don't want to do it too often as well because I think it's a balance. It's a risk, right? If you do it too often, you are then increasing chances of maintenance-induced failure. So I think maybe every
600
500 hours.
hours, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah. I was
600
gonna say
hours or
500,
something
right?
like
So
that
something
is
like that, yeah.
reasonable.
And if you have a good shop that you trust, that they can do a good job, yeah, probably not a bad
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. And yeah, just find a very good mechanic who is specialized in these carburetors because these carburetors are tricky and they have to be treated carefully. Yeah.
That's
So
why
this
I don't
is
like
this is my
carburetors.
yeah, this is my biggest learning about this technical part that it's have to be really careful about carburetors, and I recommend everyone to look very close by to your carburetors you're flying behind Rotax. With injected engine, although Rotax injected engine, that would never happen, even if one of the injection system is failed because they have a two injector per cylinder, which is reasonable,
Yeah,
right?
but it has its
So
own issues. I mean,
I mean,
it
yeah,
has
yeah,
its own.
but
We've had issues with the IS engines. We have all kinds of issues. We had exhaust issues. We had FADEC issues. We had engine stopping in flight. We had all kinds of stuff with those engines. So
and engine stop in flight for what
yeah,
reason? For what reason?
FADEC, some kind of failure. I don't remember the details, but yeah, we had an engine fail, stop in flight completely.
So two system because it has two
Yeah, there's
systems.
two systems. There's this and that.
Okay.
I think the design of it is really nice. As an engineer, I really appreciate the design. And actually, when I started studying systems for the Rotax 912 IS, I was really impressed with the redundancy, with how everything was built and made. I really appreciate the thought that they put into it, but the implementation leaves a lot to be desired, unfortunately. Even though on the surface they've done everything correctly, it's all properly manufactured, properly engineered, but when it hits the reality of it, the practical use, application every day, flying these airplanes, we've flown these Rotexes a lot, easily like 8 hours a day, every day. Then it starts to kind of come apart at the seams. Unfortunately, we had issues with all parts of it. Exhaust is a big problem with exhaust for some reason on these engines. Exhaust just falls apart. We had to replace exhaust multiple times. I don't know. I don't have an answer.
My decision, like what after everything has happened, just to overhaul the carburetors and of course do
Yeah.
the whole inspection for the airplane that there is no excessive there is no damages or cracks caused by this excessive vibration
Yeah.
and continue flying behind this engine. So as soon as the problem was solved, that it runs smooth, it runs great. So I'm very satisfied with that. Maybe another point that I want to highlight is what I could do better as well is around my home airfield, which is in this case Zadar Lima Delta Zulu Delta, to to see where there is some fields available. I wasn't aware about this particular field that it is available as a spot for emergency landing. Because by just thinking about that postscriptum, the probability that something happened near your home airfield is higher because it's obviously you just starting and landing most of the time there.
Yeah.
So it's better to know like some fields around and just have your flight continue observing like some fields. I mean, for my area where it's just either cities or rocks or sea, then it's very critical. If you find
Okay.
someone in
Now,
Hungary, it's not a problem probably.
What about this? On the airplane, did you have some kind of a first aid kit?
I didn't.
Okay, so that's another thing, right? Imagine you did land, but let's say it was a rougher landing. Let's say maybe you broke the front landing gear and you hit your head on something. Now you're bleeding, right? So do you have something to stop the bleeding? Do you have something to like maybe disinfect something, right?
Yeah, that's a good point as well, and it's not a lot of weight
Yeah,
to
just a
carry
small
with
first
you.
aid kit. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that wouldn't be a terrible idea to have that with you. And that's another thing you have to think about these off airport landings is that something that people don't always think about is what are you going to do after you land? You know, especially people who fly, let's say, you fly Cirrus with a parachute, right? So, okay, your forced landing procedure is now a bit easier, right? It's not straightforward, but it's a bit easier. But I see people flying, let's say, wintertime, let's say February, and they're flying over vast areas of nothing. Let's say they go to the, upstate somewhere, I don't know, and there is nothing, and it's snow on the ground. So let's say you pull the chute, now you're on the ground, now you're in an airplane, right? Hopefully nobody's injured, but maybe somebody's injured. And then it is cold. Let's say it's very cold outside, negative temperatures, and you got nothing. You got like pants, a t-shirt, because that's how people jump on the plane. And I see it all the time in the wintertime. People just jump on the plane like it's a car, jeans, t-shirt, and that's it. And I'm thinking like, well, what if you have to spend 4 hours in a snow field, right, after a forced landing, right? Are you going to survive 4 hours in negative temperatures? And the answer is probably, maybe not. So it's always helpful to have like some warm clothes with you if it's wintertime, right? A hat, gloves. Gloves are huge, right? Because if you have to do some kind of survival stuff, then without gloves, it's going to suck if you don't have gloves.
That's a
So
good point. Luckily, in Croatia here, we don't have, in this part, we don't have snow, so it was very mild weather, but it's definitely
it's just something to
good
think
to
about,
have.
right? Like
Yeah.
I always, just like you, I can see you have a thought process about this stuff, right? Which is very good. It's very good. It's probably why you can talk about this now, and but I
Smiling.
always had the same thing. I had stuff on my flight bag that people always laughed at me. I had like a fire starter stuff. Like if I need to start a fire, I have a fire starter. And my friend was always laughing at me about this. Obviously, I never needed it, right? But it doesn't weigh anything, and it's in my bag. So like if I ever have to use it, it's great. It's there. If I never have to use it, that's fine.
Yeah, but you should admit that the probability of something happened like this is very low,
Yeah.
right? So I hope that it would never happen in on my lifetime with me because I already had the chance. By probability, it should never
That's
happen.
not how probability works.
So that's why
Unfortunately,
people think it a bit
you're on the
differently.
risk group because you fly in these kind of a smaller batch airplanes, kind of experimentals, almost like experimental things, right? So you
Yeah.
are in a different risk group, unfortunately, with this.
Check just one more topic. How I did rescue the airplane from here.
Who, by the way, who is the owner of that field?
The owner of that field actually came to see what's happened,
With a shotgun?
and no man, I was impressed with the perception or how helpful people around. The
Hmm.
owner of the field came and actually called the trucks that you can see now on the photos
Oh,
to rescue the airplane. He
nice.
was very kind. He uses this field for ships time to
Okay.
time. At this time they was not there, but he has several fields and he's sort of like a farm. And another people came to help some people with a quadricycle. They pull in the aircraft to the road, like you see here, because this whole ground was quite wet. You can see how low the plane is sitting on this on the wheels, and you see the track here as well. So the plane was quite the field was quite soft and wet.
Hmm.
So people came and helped, and we disassembled the wings. Europa has a quick detachable wings, just the four
It's very
pins.
nice, very
It is
helpful.
very
And
nice,
it
yes.
was built to be in case of this situation like this.
Yeah, it was built for transportation. And so I used this feature, and then when I on the ground, I was trying to think now how do I rescue airplane from here, and it was a bit of also like pressure that I didn't think about. It's how I don't damage it now. Like okay, it was not damaged when I landed, but just in the way of transportation, which is probably not suitable for this airplane, like how to not damage it. So we took some cushions from the airplane, put it on this like a bed, and put wings on it. And the guys were so helpful. This from this team, they were so helpful to this actually two guys the next day unloading it from the in the airport. It was so helpful to provide the stuff. He ran to pick up some more like this stuff just to put some wings on to not damage anything and
Hmm.
very careful. So they took a time and yeah, amazing.
That's
Amazing.
really
But
nice.
yeah, but the things that Europa can be easily wing can be disassembled and loaded. Very nice. This is a nice photo on the petrol station. A lot of people stop by and thinking, are you that pilot who just like had a crash landing? And you know
You,
why? And then you know why they ask that? Because it was all over the news. That was
oh yeah.
very unexpected for
Hold
me
on, let me Google this.
because, but they started immediately to come. The news, like this big channel news, came with. They found found an airplane, start filming, asking questions,
That's funny.
and it started immediately on the radio, like broadcasting, and I got a lot of phone calls and messages from the friends who immediately found that I had this like misfortune
Hmm.
because of the news. Like I didn't tell anyone. I was just there busy with the airplane and trying to figure out how to rescue it. But that was thing that was not expected. I was, still in shock, and they just start like pushing and asking questions, and I was like, wow. Yeah,
Actually,
they did
just
their job, but
uh,
of course,
Croatian news in Zagreb in May 7th. A small plane also lost an engine, looks like, and they landed and they didn't survive. So, which means that, and that was a Croatian Air Force guys training. So these forced landings are much more difficult than people think they are.
yeah,
Everybody
yeah, of
thinks that,
course.
oh yeah, I can always force land it anywhere, but in practice it's not, it's really difficult. People come in too high, people come in too fast, people forget to configure the airplane correctly, and we
Yeah.
see it all the time, all the time. That's why that's why Cirrus put the parachute in the plane, because most people can't do it. Like an average private pilot flying an airplane, let's say a couple times a month or like once a month, they're not capable of doing a forced landing. So
Luckily for you now, you don't
props
have
to
to
you.
take care about that
Yeah, I don't have to
with
think about
your
this
two
stuff
turbine
anymore. Yeah,
engines, right?
yeah, that's one thing I don't have to think about. I don't look for fields anymore when I fly.
It's quite relaxing. It should be quite relaxing.
Yeah, it's very
Thanks
relaxing.
everyone. Thanks everyone who joined and watches this video. Uh, don't hesitate to ask any question in the comments. I'll be um, willing to very open to answer those questions. By the way, I was filing incident report to the Croatian authorities. They just told me like since it's no injuries, no damages, just file it and send over the emails. That's it. So that was all the
Nice.
formal part. Yeah.
That's good.
And
I was gonna ask about this. Yeah, if you had to file something.
yeah, yeah. So everything went very well, and I was not long time after that. I was engine was repaired and everything inspected. And
So
after that, I completed many
how
many
quickly
flights.
how quickly did you fly after this?
I flew on this airplane after it got repaired, so probably about a month and something, and it was scary. It
Yeah, I
was
was gonna
scary. I
ask.
was
I was
forced myself into
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes.
I was
And
gonna
because
ask
it
about
was
it.
just repaired, and because I didn't fly for months, and because I had this like an issue, so but I was planning it to fly accordingly to be within a gliding distance and a long runway, like 2 kilometers that I was departing. So this is like a big airport, so I had all kind of support if I would need so, and I was communicating to ATCs. This is a post-maintenance flight, so they were like, what I'm doing.
Yeah, I
And of
think
course,
the
they knew what happened like just a month ago.
yeah,
Like it was just on their
it's this
backyard.
guy. I think the biggest issue is to like learn to trust the airplane again, right?
Yeah,
Because you have to
yeah,
like we every time we fly these planes, we trust them. We trust that the plane is in a good condition. We trust that the maintenance was done properly. We trust the maintenance personnel. We trust, and now I trust the fueler because I don't fuel the plane myself anymore, right? So I trust that the fueler did the right job, right? I trust
yeah,
that all the people who serviced the plane did their job. And I think when you lose that trust, that's difficult to bring it back to
yeah,
acquire that
100%,
trust again. Yeah,
100%. So without further ado, like we just wrapping it up, and yeah, and just saying everyone, thank you, and thank you, Ilya, for joining me and being a fun guy here. Yeah, and more experienced and for all your comments and your good feedback. And you say that I did right, so it was
of
good.
course you did. You're
Yeah, it
alive,
was
so that's
good.
the that's the
Yeah,
main thing that matters. You're alive, and the plane can fly again. That's like amazing.
yeah,
If the plane was total but you're fine, that would be still a good result.
yeah,
But the fact that the plane can fly again, that's excellent. So
yeah.
you definitely did a good job.
And thank God it happened in this time, at these conditions. And if you have not been subscribed for the channel, you have a chance to subscribe it. And if you want to see the review for this airplane or other airplanes, see you next time. And if you would like Ilya to come again and speak with me as a guest, just let me know in the comments. He will be very pleased, I'm sure. All right. See you next time.
All right, bye bye.
Bye bye.